Planet Earth moves through the vast reaches of space like a ship sails through the waves at sea. Like passengers on a journey, all of the humans, plants, and animals of the world are traveling together on this huge spaceship we call Earth. Our planet has huge stores of all the materials life needs: air, water, food, the energy of the sun, and many other natural resources. And unlike an ocean-going ship that leaves port with all the provisions it needs, Spaceship Earth renews some resources such as air and water. But other resources we use, such as oil and natural gas, are limited, and we've already damaged the ozone layer which protects life on Earth. We must learn to use our supplies wisely and protect our planet carefully. What makes Earth just the right place for life to exist in space? What gives Earth day and night, seasons, climate, and weather? What do we know about the atmosphere and the lands and the seas? Planet Earth is on a long journey through space. As shipmates, we're all on board for life. So let's find out all we can about this huge ship we're traveling on, Planet Earth. Seen through the rings of the distant planet Saturn, Earth looks like a little speck in space. Earth and Saturn are two of the 8 planets circling the Sun. The Sun is very large, 600 times bigger than all the planets put together. If the Sun were the size of a basketball, Earth would be the size of a grain of rice at the other end of a basketball court. Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars are the 4 inner planets. These 4 small rocky planets are closer to the Sun than Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, the 4 huge outer planets. When astronomers first discovered Pluto through their telescopes, they thought it was a planet too. But now Pluto is called a dwarf planet. The Sun, the 8 planets, their moons, dwarf planets, comets, asteroids, and meteoroids make up a collection of objects traveling through space like a fleet of different-sized spaceships. We call this our solar system. Our planet Earth looks like a big blue and white ball from space. The white patches on Earth are mostly clouds. The large patch of white at the top is frozen water, the polar ice cap. The blue places are ocean waters. Only the brown and green places are lands. Water covers 3/4 of Earth. Earth is the only planet in the solar system that has liquid water on its surface. Perhaps Earth is the wrong name for our planet. With so little Earth on planet Earth, maybe a better name would have been Planet Ocean or Planet Water. Earth is about 93 million miles, 150 million kilometers away from the Sun. Earth's distance from the Sun makes it a Goldilocks planet, meaning not too hot, not too cold, but just right for life to exist. If Earth were any closer to the Sun, the oceans would boil away. If Earth were any further from the Sun, it would become an icy planet. Plants, animals, and humans could not exist on a very hot or very cold planet. Earth is the only planet in our solar system that is the right distance from the Sun for life to flourish. Do you think you can explain to your friends why you and they live on a Goldilocks planet? Earth rotates like a giant top, spinning on an imaginary line that goes through the North and South poles, called its axis. We call one complete rotation 1 day. Earth's rotation is what makes the Sun appear to rise at daybreak, move through the sky, and to set at nightfall. As Earth rotates, half of the planet is lighted by the Sun. That is the daytime side. The other half is dark. That is the nighttime side. Earth also travels around the Sun in a nearly circular path called an orbit. We call the trip around the Sun Earth's revolution. It takes 365 1/4 days, one Earth year, for Earth to make one complete revolution. Mercury is the closest planet to the Sun, so it has a much shorter trip around it. It takes Mercury only 88 Earth days to make one revolution around the Sun. Neptune is the farthest planet in our solar system. It takes Neptune 164.8 Earth years to make just one trip around the Sun. If you lived on Neptune, you would still be waiting for your first birthday party. Spring in the Northern Hemisphere. Fall in the Southern Hemisphere. Summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Winter in the Southern Hemisphere. Fall in the Northern Hemisphere. Spring in the Southern Hemisphere. Winter in the Northern Hemisphere. Summer in the Southern Hemisphere. As planet Earth revolves around the Sun, the axis always remains tilted in the same direction. For part of each year, the top half of the planet tilts toward the Sun. The days are longer, nights are shorter, and the temperatures are warmer. The northern half, or hemisphere of Earth, is having summer. At the same time, the bottom half of the planet tilts away from the Sun. Days are shorter, nights are longer, and the temperatures are cooler. The southern hemisphere of the planet is having winter. Midway between winter and summer are spring and fall, when Earth's axis is tilted in the middle, neither toward nor away from the Sun. As the year goes by, the North Pole tilts away from the Sun, and the South Pole tilts toward the Sun. The seasons change all over the planet. In the Northern Hemisphere, summer gives way to fall. Winter then follows and slips into spring. The Southern Hemisphere has the opposite seasons. When it's winter in the northern half of Earth, it's summer in the southern half. If you traveled on a jet airplane, you could experience winter and summer in the same day by flying from one hemisphere to another. Earth has 5 main climate zones: 1 tropical, or torrid zone, 2 temperate zones, and 2 polar, or frigid zones. Latitudes are imaginary lines that circle the globe and mark the zones. The tropical zone is like a belt that goes around Earth's middle. A line of latitude about 23.5 degrees north of the equator, called the Tropic of Cancer, marks the northern border of the tropical zone. Another line of latitude, called the Tropic of Capricorn, about 23.5 degrees south of the equator, marks the southern border of the tropical zone. Earth's axis. Sun rays. Arctic Circle. Tropic of Cancer. Equator. Tropic of Capricorn. Antarctic Circle. The tropics are usually hot or warm year-round. Most of the tropics have a dry and wet season during the year. About 40% of Earth's people live within the tropical zone. The tropical zone is mostly rainforests and deserts, but has a few regions that are very high up and cold all year, including Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa and the Andes Mountains in South America. These mountainous places are where you can see snow-capped peaks even on the equator. The polar zones cover Earth's north and south poles. The southern polar zone includes the snow-covered continent of Antarctica and the surrounding icy oceans. The northern polar zone includes northern regions of Canada, Alaska, Siberia, Greenland, and the frozen Arctic Ocean. The Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle are the boundary lines of the polar zones. Snow and ice blanket the polar zones, and the air is very dry. Strong winds blow most of the time. Because of the tilt in Earth's axis, the polar zones have many hours of sunlight during summer months when the axis is tilted toward the sun, and many hours of darkness during winter months when the axis is tilted away from the sun. The North Polar Zone has no trees, but small plants grow in a region called the Tundra. In the tundra, Temperatures get warmer during the summer, but the air is still freezing. The tundra is the home of some large animals such as caribou and polar bears. Native peoples, called the Inuit, live in the North Polar Zone. The South Polar Zone is home to emperor and other penguins and much ocean life. It's so cold that the only people living here are scientists who are studying the icy regions of the planet. The coldest temperature ever recorded was negative 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit in the Antarctic. That's certainly cold enough to freeze your nose if you don't cover up. The temperate zones are where most of Earth's people live. The temperate zones are bounded by the tropics on one side and the polar zones on the other. Temperatures often average about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, about 10 degrees Celsius. But the temperatures may swing widely from one extreme to another. In some regions in the temperate zone, winters are extremely cold, and in other regions, summers are extremely hot. New Zealand, parts of Australia, the southernmost tip of Africa, and South America are in the South Temperate Zone. More people live in the North Temperate Zone, which includes the United States, much of Canada, most of China and Japan, part of India, nearly all of Europe, and most of Russia. The oceans that lie in the temperate zones do not have nearly the same temperature swings as the land. During the summers, temperatures in the waters and on the lands around the waters stay around 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Even in the winters, temperatures don't usually drop below about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperate zones are not so much moderate, but rather alternately hot and cold. Where do you live? Where do you think it would be the most fun to live? Why? Like the skin on an apple, the atmosphere surrounds Earth. The atmosphere is made of gases such as nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon dioxide, as well as small particles of dust and water. The atmosphere acts as a protective blanket for Earth. Animals and plants need some of the gases in the atmosphere to live and survive. Without the atmosphere, Earth's surface would be as lifeless and desolate as the surface of the moon. There are 5 layers of the atmosphere: troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, and exosphere. Exosphere, thermosphere, mesosphere, stratosphere, troposphere. The atmosphere starts at Earth's surface and goes up from there. The lowest layer of the atmosphere closest to Earth is the troposphere. This is where people live. Here also are storms and clouds, rain and snow, and most kinds of weather. The troposphere extends out to as much as 10 miles above Earth's surface. The air gets thinner and there are fewer molecules of oxygen the higher you go, so people have a difficult time breathing high up in the troposphere. Air temperature also decreases with height. It can be a summery day on the surface, but at the top of the troposphere, the temperature is a shivery negative 60 degrees Fahrenheit. The stratosphere reaches from the top of the troposphere to about 31 miles above Earth's surface. This layer has about 1/5 of the atmosphere's gases, but very little water vapor. There are no clouds here. Planes fly on the lower level of the stratosphere. A few kinds of birds, such as bar-headed geese, have been seen to fly there as well. Oddly, the air temperature of the stratosphere increases with height. The mesosphere reaches from the top of the stratosphere to about 56 miles above Earth. Gases become thinner, and temperatures get colder the higher you go. The stratosphere and the mesosphere are the middle atmosphere zones. The top of the mesosphere is often the coldest place in the atmosphere, where temperatures are as low as negative 148 degrees Fahrenheit. The thermosphere reaches from the top of the mesosphere up to nearly 375 miles above Earth. The gases are very thin, and temperatures reach higher than 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit. However, the air is so thin that if you were up there, it would still feel very cold to your skin. That is because there is a difference between temperature and heat. There are very few particles of air moving very rapidly. That's called temperature. But there are not enough moving particles. That's called heat, to warm you. The exosphere is the outermost layer of the atmosphere. It reaches from the thermosphere to about 6,200 miles above Earth. The exosphere is made up mostly of hydrogen and helium, the lightest gases in our atmosphere. There is little or no boundary between the exosphere and the airlessness of outer space. There are thousands of man-made satellites that orbit Earth in the exosphere. 2/3 of them no longer work, but still spin around our planet. Scientists say that we've left a lot of useless junk in space. The jet stream is a rapidly flowing river of air found in the upper troposphere. It forms a boundary between different masses of warm and cold air. The path of the jet stream drops toward the equator in warmer months and moves toward the poles in colder months. Because of Earth's rotation, the jet stream flows from west to east in a series of waves. The jet stream influences the weather in many ways. Winter storms are often brought along by the jet stream. Cold, wet weather brought by the jet stream includes blizzards, snowstorms, sleet, freezing rain, ice storms, lake-effect snows, and nor'easters. The kind of precipitation depends upon how cold the water droplets are, so land that is near warmer ocean waters gets mostly rain rather than snow or ice during the winter. During summer months, the jet stream brings high temperatures day after day to regions in the middle of continents away from oceans. They also get tropical storms such as hurricanes, tornadoes, thunderstorms, and heavy warm rains. Weather often changes from day to day in the temperate zone where people live, so people spend a lot of time talking about the weather. Next time you talk about the weather, share this tongue twister with your friends. Whether the weather be fine, or whether the weather be not, whether the weather be cold, or whether the weather be hot, we'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. The oceans cover nearly 3/4 of Earth's surface. The major ones are the Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, and Arctic oceans. The Pacific is the largest ocean. All of Earth's land areas could fit over the Pacific Ocean, and there would still be room for another continent the size of Asia. Just like on land, the ocean floor is made of flat plains, steep valleys, and high mountains. The deepest part of the Pacific Ocean is called the Challenger Deep. It is so deep that more than 110 statues of liberty could be stacked one on top of another, and there would still be more room beneath the waves. 6,600 feet, 13,200 feet, 19,700 feet, 26,000 feet, 33,000 feet, 36,000 feet. Mount Everest, 29,000 feet above sea level. Mariana Trench. Challenger Deep, 36,000 feet below sea level. The Atlantic is the second largest of the world's oceans. Since the construction of the Panama Canal in 1914, ships have been able to travel quickly between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Traveling through the canal shortened the sea voyage between New York City and San Francisco by nearly 8,000 miles. The Panama Canal is too small for some of today's largest ships to pass through, and they need to travel around the southern tip of South America to go from one ocean to another. The Indian is the third largest of Earth's oceans. Much of this ocean lies south of the equator. Many ships sailing from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean travel through the Suez Canal in Egypt. The Arctic is the smallest ocean at the very top of planet Earth. It's so cold that most of the Arctic Ocean is covered by blocks of moving ice the year round. 7 continents make up the land areas of Earth: Asia, Africa, North America, South America, Europe, Australia, and Antarctica. On Spaceship Earth, the continents are where people live. As shipmates, we may not be sitting right next to each other, but we're close by. Something like being in the next row or the next room. Asia is the largest continent. China and India in Asia are the 2 most populous countries on Earth. 2 out of every 3 people on Spaceship Earth live in Asia. 5 out of the 6 most populated cities in the world, Shanghai, Istanbul, Karachi, Mumbai, and Beijing, are in Asia. Asia has the highest and lowest places on Earth. Mount Everest on the border of Nepal and Tibet rises more than 29,000 feet above sea level. The Dead Sea is about 1,300 feet below sea level. Africa is the 2nd largest continent, and many people on planet Earth live there. In fact, about 1 out of every 6 people lives in Africa. The Sahara in northern Africa is the largest warm desert on Earth. South of the Sahara Desert, Africa is covered by tropical rainforests and high plains. Many different kinds of wildlife, such as zebras, giraffes, lions, leopards, elephants, and rhinoceroses, live there. Unfortunately, their numbers have decreased greatly in the last century. Some of the countries in Africa have passed laws protecting their animals and the environment. Game preserves and national parks provide a safe place for many kinds of animals. But wildlife conservation is difficult in a continent the size of Africa. North America is the 3rd largest continent. It is made up of 3 large countries, the United States, Canada, and Mexico, as well as the countries of Central America and the Caribbean islands. About 1 out of every 12 people lives in North America. Mexico City in Mexico and New York City in the United States are the cities with the most people in North America. South America is the 4th largest continent. About 1 out of every 20 people lives in South America. Sao Paulo in Brazil is the largest city in South America. A thin strip of land called the Isthmus of Panama connects South America and North America. Europe is the 6th largest continent on Earth. About 1 out of every 10 people lives in Europe. Europe is a small continent, but heavily populated. Many Europeans live in large cities such as London, Paris, Moscow, Berlin, and Rome. Fewer than 1 out of 100 people lives in Australia. Australia is the only continent that is its own country. Antarctica is an ice-covered continent located at the South Pole. It has no countries and no people living there except those living on scientific bases set up by other countries. Over 7 billion people live on planet Earth. Here are some of the numbers. Births each year, over 75 million. Cars produced in a year, over 34 million. Bicycles produced in a year, over 77 million. Computers sold in a year, over 200 million. Email messages sent today, over 180 billion. Tweets sent today, over 140 million. Google searches today, nearly 2 billion. Land lost to erosion this year, nearly 4 million hectares. Each hectare is about 2.5 acres. Oil pumped today, about 42 million barrels. Time left until the oil runs out, about 15,000 days, or 41 years. Energy used in a single day on Earth, about 200 million megawatt hours. Solar energy striking Earth today, about 1.5 trillion megawatt hours. Time left until solar energy runs out, About 5 billion years. Time left on Earth's journey through space? Think of planet Earth as a spaceship traveling at 60,000 miles an hour around the sun and spinning on its axis at about 1,000 miles an hour. The nearest energy supplying our spaceship Earth is the sun, about 93 million miles away. The sun, all the planets and moons, and the rest of the solar system also travel together, circling the center of the Milky Way galaxy. So as a shipmate on planet Earth, you are never still, even when you're asleep in bed. Earth has everything on board that people need to survive: food, water, and air with oxygen. Earth is a true Goldilocks planet. It is not too hot, not too cold, but just right for all the living things that exist. We are all shipmates on a journey through space that will last for millions of years and travel trillions and trillions of miles. But we have to share our Earth's supplies carefully so there are enough to go around, not just for now, but for future generations. We journey together on the most amazing adventure anyone will ever make.